Donovan Mitchell has been traded. The news dropped this week, and it was a shocker. The Utah Jazz traded Donovan Mitchell to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this changes everything. The Cavs came out of nowhere and snatched up the summer's biggest free agent. I'm going to talk about what I like and don't like about the trade. But before we continue, I just want to remind you to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe, it really helps out the channel, and let's dive into it. So let's start about what I do like about the trade. I like chaos, and Danny Ainge does too. He had a huge price tag for Mitchell when the Knicks came knocking, and this return seems like a step back from what the Jazz were reportedly looking for early in the offseason. This trade seems like a subtle middle finger to the New York Knicks, who once again have struck out on a star free agent. For the Jazz, I like the return they got in terms of draft picks. They pretty much got all of the Cavs' future draft picks as far out as possible right now. They got 3 unprotected picks in 2025, 27, and 29, and 2 pick swaps in 2026 and 2028. They also got Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton. Both these players are rotational, starter level players. They can just let both Markkanen and Sexton have a green light so that they can boost their stats, and I think both are going to get traded at the trade deadline. For the Cavs, this is an obvious W. They now have a star, a high volume scoring guard. They already had a high volume playmaking guard in Darius Garland. So this backcourt could be the best in the Eastern Conference depending on how their games fit together. With Donovan Mitchell being a great scorer for a player of his height and Garland being able to play next to another guard like he did with Colin Sexton in the past, that's pretty scary. Pairing Garland and Mitchell with Evan Mobley's generational defense and interior presence seems like a perfect fit for the future, especially with Mobley's ceiling being described as a future MVP. Things are looking up for the Cavs. This move makes the Cavs contenders in the Eastern Conference, and they're being called the best starting 5 in the league. I disagree, but the hype is already there for the Cavs. So far, both teams seem to have gotten what they wanted. The Jazz got future unprotected draft picks and 2 tradable players in Sexton and Markkanen. The Cavs, they added an all-star level guard to their own team. But what are my issues with the trade?
No, don't like that.
For the Jazz, they were in a win-win situation. The front office already made up their mind about trading Gobert and Mitchell after last season, so they got their job done. For the Cavs, this is somewhat of a gamble. They have just traded their picks for the future to get Donovan Mitchell. This is a trade that's made by a team trying to take that next step and contend for a title. But with the amount of assets traded for Mitchell, there's a lot of pressure to win now. Mitchell has a reputation of being a below-average playmaker because of his issues passing or not passing to Rudy Gobert. It might be overblown, but it also might not be, and only time is going to tell if the narratives were actually facts. Mitchell also is a known pylon on defense. This was one of the biggest flaws in the Utah Jazz teams, was their poor perimeter defense. Donovan Mitchell was the prime suspect, as he is short and not as strong as his body might make you think. One of the strengths of the Cavs last season was their defense, in terms of all the length of Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Lauri Markkanen, Kevin Love. Swapping out a tall defender that shoots, that fit in for a negative defensive player is kinda counterproductive on the defensive side of the ball. Let me know in the comments what you think of the narrative that Donovan Mitchell is a bad defender and can never become a positive because of his height. Another thing that teams should be taking into account when building championship teams today is depth. Injuries have become a swing factor of how things work out in the league over the last few years. Let's take, for example, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics didn't have to play the Bucks with Middleton, and Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero missed multiple games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Trading away depth and trading away any chance of building depth through the draft is a gamble that the Cavs have to hit now. Mitchell does not have a history of injuries, but the Cavs definitely do. Injuries derailed the great season they were having last year, but unless you have a top 5 player that never gets hurt like Giannis or Luka, every championship team in the last 4 years put themselves in a position to succeed with defense and depth. That's exactly where the Cavs got weaker this offseason. So I think overall, both teams won the trade. The Jazz got their draft picks and their trade assets for their rebuild. The Cavs, they got their new all-star backcourt duo, and their future looks bright. To me, the Cavs definitely took a step forward, but there's a lot of overhyping going on. The Eastern Conference is stacked, and there's a ton of good defensive teams. So the Cavs have their work cut out for them. And that's the gamble that the Cavs have taken by trading for Donovan Mitchell. But who knows? Spida might take Cleveland from the gutter back to championship contender status. I can't wait for the season to start so we can find out. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, hit the big red button. It really helps out the channel. You'll also know when the next video drops. And I'm out.